Whether we like it or not, all of us in our lives make judgments about other people, we form opinions, and we react according to those judgments. Those judgments are made when we're at school until the moment that we pass away. Now, it's no different in your business. We need to make judgments about how we're doing. We need to make observations. We need to react to how things are progressing. I'm going to be covering this in I Hate Numbers today. We're going to look about taking your business performance seriously and what you need to do to actually move your business dial forward. Now, I'm basing this on many years of experience in my own business, as well as helping thousands of clients over the years. Hi folks, welcome to I Hate Numbers. My name is Mahmood. I am a proud accountant. Yes, it does exist. I'm a mentor, an educator, and also proud author of the book I Hate Numbers, the book that will transform and alter your relationship with numbers for the better. So let us have a bit of an taking your business performance seriously. In terms of running a business, we can run our business in a number of different ways here. We're not just talking about the large corporates, the large multinationals, whether you're an acorn-sized business, however you set your stall out, however you define where you want your business to go, is really important. And I can't emphasize that enough, that you've actually got to take performance, not only the measuring of performance, how well you're doing, but how you manage and react to that performance really, really seriously if you want to transform from a hobby into a business that you're aspiring to, that's going to be sustainable, that help you deliver your why, gives you the impact that you want in your business. So what does that involve? Now, let's take the idea of performance. Some people may hear that word, that term, performance, and they think it means something that only elite athletes will do. It may be something that large corporates will do, but it's not. In the intro, I was referring to the idea that all of us, however much we think we don't, we all make judgments about other people. Judgments are made about us. Those judgments and those reactions to that can literally be in a fleeting moment. So the moment we're at school, where our parents might make judgments about whether we're cute babies, our ability to mature and grow, how well we're speaking, how well we're interacting with other children. And depending on that, what that is, they will make decisions accordingly. If you're going to be a naughty child, if that's going to manifest itself, then one imagines that you're going to have that situation where parents are going to step in and modify your behaviour. When you're at school, your teachers will make judgments about how you're performing, how you're developing, and subject to that performance, they will make decisions and behave and interact with you accordingly. That doesn't leave us. We make judgments of how people look. Subtly in our brains, we're going through that very quick assimilation, that reference purpose based on the outer surface, as much as we try not to, the aesthetics, how somebody comes across us, and that reaction we have, we form an opinion whether we think we actually like that person, whether we think we're going to not necessarily get on with that person. We might meet somebody very fleetingly, and based on the interaction that happens first time round, we will form a judgment. Now, it doesn't have to be an exact judgment, doesn't have to be an accurate judgment, but judgments are made nevertheless. Now, if we translate that into the world of business, performance for me is about making judgments about how well you're doing. Many clients, many businesses that I come across, when you ask them how is your business performing, well, first of all, that's a very open and that's a very sort of bland question, isn't it? And a classic response will be, it depends what you're referring to, depending on the contextual nature of which you're looking at that in. So let me talk about a framework, first of all, about performance, why it's so important, what performance actually means, and what you can do to actually up your game in measuring your own business performance, why you should be doing it as well. This is not just an academic exercise just to go through the motions. All business owners have got lots of demands on their time. All business owners have got lots of things to deal with. So this is not about overloading you with unnecessary things, but it's putting information out there, tools and techniques that's going to help you progress towards where you want your business to actually go. Now, critically, the first thing for me, for any business is for you to define, for you to decide, for you to have an idea and articulate what does your end goal look like. Where do you want your business to go? What's the future for your business? What's your, I'll call it your Northern Star. Now, typically, if we draw a parallel here, let's imagine that scenario where we may be somebody who aspires to a particular lifestyle. We may decide that for a number of reasons that we want to improve our well-being, we want to improve our health, and our Northern Star, our end point may be to have not only just improve our sort of physical well-being, but also improve the battle that goes on between our ears. And what we might decide to do there is that actually one key objective may be to improve our blood pressure. Our blood pressure may be abnormally high. So our goal, our objective, that Northern Star is to get our blood pulse to a certain level. And here, it's not just to say aspirationally we just want to improve it, but in general terms, that's not really measurable. So whatever your goal, whatever your objective is, whatever that Northern Star, you've got to be capable of recognizing it. What does it look like? So could you actually recognize that, again, by observation, by number or whatever? So effectively, in terms of BP, blood pressure, that we can actually quantify that and put a number to that. Now, for me, it's always about fixing your end goal, your Northern Star. That's the one that we put in our personal life. If we looked in our business life, it may be a financial goal is to perhaps reach a certain level of profitability. It may be for some businesses 50,000, and that represents quite a significant milestone for them. For others, that might be quite small change. That might be quite, small amounts of money. But whatever it is, fix it for yourself. Make sure it's capable of being measured. Make sure it's capable of being quantified. Make sure it's capable of being articulated. Because if you can't describe it, if you can't articulate it, if you can't recognize it, you'll never know if you've actually achieved it. Now, having fixed your Northern Star, having fixed your goal, your objective, which you can make smart, you then got to figure out that route map. How do you go from where you are now to get to that point in the future that you've actually said that you'd like to get to? Reflect your personal, your business wish list in there. And the next thing you do, you're going to figure out some form of route map. Now, if we go back to the analogy that I was just drawing about lifestyle, about blood pressure, well, one route map might be is that you've got to think in terms of the diet that you might have to introduce. You may want to reduce your salt intake. You may want to increase your physical activity. And in that route map here, it's about how you're doing it, and you've got to set yourself milestones along that way. If you are, for example, somebody who's got a desk-based profession, desk-based service, if you've got somebody who's quite active, then the physical requirements that you put on yourself may alter. So what is that route map? What is that journey plan going to look like? And again, it's a real tough thing to take on board sometimes, because what it requires us to do is to have time away from being involved in running our business, to actually have time to create that headspace where we can actually think about the map, the way that we're going to progress from where we are now to that end point. And one thing we need to avoid really critically is not to get overwhelmed by the process. So look at things in stages, look at things in breaking that down in phases. Now, if we drew that and cross into our business about getting that £50,000 target or £500,000, whatever that figure actually is, we're going to figure out how do we do that. Do we sell more products that we have already? Do we introduce new products? Do we have efficiency savings that we can make? And what we need to do in that route map, in that plan, is to break it down into what I call milestones. So in making judgments, we've got to have our endpoint. We've got to have the plan, the route mapped as to how we get there, because ultimately our performance, how we judge ourselves, how we're progressing, is going to be against those reference points. And if we don't have reference points, we can't really decide, we can't really conclude how we're actually progressing. And performance for me is about judging progression, judging how you're doing against your benchmarks, and then actually reacting accordingly to what that is telling you. So we have our end goal, we have our route map, and I would certainly recommend that we break that route map roadmap down into manageable stages. Lots of people get overwhelmed by thinking, you know, there's my end point there, this is where I am at the moment, and that's a massive, massive gap that I've got to achieve. You think about all those climbers who go up to Everest, you know, reaching the summit is their end goal. They start at base camp. Well, the journey for them is going to be broken down into smaller incremental steps. It might be the first kilometre climb, the next 2 kilometres, and there it goes on. Each of those benchmarks, each of those milestones here for them is what they're measuring themselves against. And it's likewise the same in your business. You need to break down your route map, your progression, into what I call measurable, achievable milestones. Typically what that might look like is you break that down into what that looks on, perhaps once you've got the big picture, the big plan, what that 12-month route map looks like, break it down into measurable monthly cycles. So by the time I get to the end of month 1, what's realistic for me to have achieved by that end of point? Now notice here, by the way, folks, we're talking about what we anticipate here, because performance should always be judged against expectations, what we think is going to be achieved based on the resources, our mindset, our capacity. You can't judge performance against nothing in the air. You've got to have a reference point, and that reference point for me is, what did you set out to do? How are you actually progressing against that milestone? And then measure that, analyze it, react, and move on accordingly. Critically, the next thing that we need to throw into there, having got an end goal, having got a route map, that's broken down into stages, into what's achievable on each month that goes by. Taking that context, what we talked about earlier on about the blood pressure, it may be I have a blood pressure target of getting down to a certain level. I'm actually thinking, okay, what I'm going to be doing is to modify my diet, perhaps taking less salt, eating less processed food. I'm going to have a bit more physical activity. I'm going to go for walks, maybe 10-15 minutes a day. And as I go by each month, then I'm saying it's realistic to get to a certain level by that stage. Now the measure there, by the way, is quite easy, isn't it? You measure your blood pressure. You can measure things such as heart rate and activity, and measure it against what's achievable. Now in business, we have lots of different measures. You can have financial measures in terms of levels of profitability that you're making overall. You should be able to gauge levels of profitability you're making by each of your product groups, the services you provide. And when you actually monitor that, you need a way to actually capture what's happening in reality. And in all performance systems, you've got 2 frameworks. You've got where you want to get to, where you anticipate getting to, and then you measure reality against that. And well, let me tell you one thing, folks. Where you think you'll end up, what you're setting your path out to be, based on your skill sets, resources you have at your disposal, you will not actually achieve. The reality is you will not actually achieve your targets you've set yourself. And when I say you won't achieve them, there will be fluctuations along that journey path. Life will intervene. Things will be in your way, obstacles, challenges, circumstances outside of your control. There may be distractions. You may get shiny bauble syndrome. Lots of things are going on in your business here. But effectively, you've got a lane that you're following. You've got targets that you set yourself. You're measuring that progress against that path you set yourself. And then you literally need to make sure, typically at the end of each month, you're reviewing what you're actually doing against where you set yourself, and then make a judgment call accordingly. If you're going off course, then you've got time to actually understand why and put yourself back on course. If you actually manage to achieve those milestones, fantastic. There may be an issue later on to discuss whether those milestones are too soft, but for now, let's assume those milestones are, realistic in the context you've set yourself. Fantastic. Give yourself a tick box. In more practical terms, if we think about that dietary thing, if we think about that route map, climbing Everest, whatever you're looking at here, as you progress against those set targets, if you are achieving your targets that you set yourself, then as I said, that's fantastic. If you haven't, which is more often the case, if you've either exceeded or you've actually gone below par, you've got to understand why is it that you're not actually quite getting there. Now, this sounds great as a theory, doesn't it, folks? But there's some practical stuff. Many businesses, I find, when they try and judge how they're performing, there are two main things that sometimes go a bit wobbly, sometimes go wrong. Number one, there are far too many measures. So there's numbers coming out your ears, you've got lots of statistics, and some of them are not very meaningful at all. They don't really give you insight, they don't really help you in what you're doing. So critically at the very outset, you need to measure what's important to you and what's important to your clients and what's important to your customers. I use this idea of what's called critical success factors, and the whole idea is that for you to get to your Northern Star, what is it that you've got to be really good at? What have you got to excel at? What have you got to get right in order to meet that target? What is it your customers value from you? Do they value quality? Do they value speed of delivery? Do they value response? Do they value particular outcomes? Whatever is important to them is what you've got to be measuring. Whatever they value is what you've got to be delivering. When you come to things internally, in order for you to deliver successfully to that end client, what have you got to do internally? So is it a onboarding process that's really important that you've got to get right? You need to measure the quality of that onboarding process. If you take a company like DHL as a courier company, for example, what will be valued by their clients, what will be valued by their customers, is what I call completeness of delivery. And what that means in reality is, does your parcel, does your package get to the client on time, unbroken, complete, and as the customer's delivered, and perhaps at a value for money proposition. Now what that means is for someone like DHL, they're going to be measuring the time it takes from the order to the delivery to the end customer. They're going to be measuring things like returns, breakages. Customer complaints are useful, by the way, but for me personally speaking, customer complaints don't really give you much insight because we are still in this culture that not too many people complain directly to the company. They complain alternatively by going to vocalise their, shall we say, displeasure, either on review sites or whatever. But so we can still monitor those here, but that sort of feedback, that sort of metric, a measure, is really going to be quite important. So measure fewer things, but measure what's important. And you need to encompass a wide range of these. In future, I Hate Numbers broadcasts and podcasts and videos, etc. I'm going to be introducing different ways, different systems that you can have to actually measure that. But don't just measure financial outcome, measure things like the customers, the customer interactions, what customers find important, measure things that go on with you and your team, how you deliver, the processes that you have. Measure things like innovation, measure things like learning, but you've got to look at the whole shooting match, a wide range of things you've got to get right in order to deliver that end goal, and ultimately is to make money. And when I say to make money, by the way, we're talking about profitability, money in the bank, and this applies across the board. Whether you're a social enterprise, whether you are a private business, whether you are a not-for-profit or a private commercial company, if you do not generate sufficient value, if you do not generate sufficient profitability, your business is going to face problems sustaining itself and being there in future years to deliver that end why. So profitability for me is the key for any type of business, large, small, social enterprise, private, arts, charity, you name it. If you don't generate surpluses, if you don't generate profits, you're going to find it very difficult to sustain yourself in the future. So let's summarize where we are so far. End goal, make sure you've got some idea what your personal business end goal looks like. Make sure you've got a route map, because you're going to be measuring your progress against the route map that you set yourself. Measurements, they can be observations, they can be raw numbers, they can be surveys, they can be feedback, whatever they are, but make sure you focus on the things that are important to you, your customers, your team, to reach and get that end objective being achieved. Next, what you need is you need to make sure you've got good, competent in-house systems. You need to actually gather the data. And many organizations, many businesses, their systems for collating data, and I speak from personal experience as well as experience that I share with clients, is data systems, gathering information is quite poor. Nowadays, if you look in terms of financial systems, things like digital systems, digital accounting systems, digital management systems, there's no excuse not to invest in that. If you're serious about taking your business to a certain level, then the cost of investment in those tools is relatively low cost. You need to gather data from your social media feed, from your websites, and a good digital management system can drag things in from a number of ecosystems there as well. Got to be careful not to get overwhelmed, obviously, but if we've got an idea what we think is important, we can measure that and we can compare to our expectations. And if you don't compare to something, then you're really just going to be trying to make it up as you go along. It's all going to be opinion. There's no hard data. A very popular example, if I stray outside of my own area of expertise in the world of numbers, in the world of finance, in the world of accounting, etc., but the world of business, let's look at things like marketing. Now, if we look at something like marketing, something we can all relate to, many businesses, many entrepreneurs, many freelancers, many organizations will involve themselves with some degree of social media. And one idea is to look at the number of likes perhaps you get on a post, the number of engagements you get on a post, and that's really great. But ultimately, those engagements, those people that you hang out with, those people you're communicating with, have got to be within your target demographic, your target customer group. Getting lots of likes on a post is really great for the adrenaline, gets those cortisols going, gets those endorphins going, and we feel really good about it. But ultimately, if you're getting lots of likes or lots of engagements on a post, but none of them are your target audience, that's a really, really poor, outcome, I would say, and probably a waste of one's time as well. What we're looking for is not just the likes, not just the engagement, but what's the follow through? Is there any relationship we can identify? What's called a click-through rate? Is there actually a follow-up to a call of action that we've got, like downloading something, visiting a website? And that's the metric that we need to do. The customer engagements against click-through engagements is something that's more important than just how many people have actually liked our particular posts. So focus on measuring things that are critical, things that actually help you progress towards your Northern Star. That's ultimately what we need to do. Last thing I would suggest is that we need to make sure that we do this on a regular basis, get into a discipline. Now, if this is something relatively new to you, something that you do, just cursory here, my personal view would be it's about making small changes in behavior. It's about making small little steps to establish patterns, to establish behavior patterns, and then you can always build on them. So if it's something you don't often do, my viewpoint would be if you sit down, you figured out your Northern Star, and you can't do this overnight, by the way, folks. Clients that we work with is effectively, it's a process of generating that wish list, generating a business story, doing all the figures that come with that. But once you've got that, is once a week, once a month, if you take two headlines like profitability and cash flow, have a look at what your bank statements are showing. Look at the money that's come into the bank. Look at your statements, look at them digitally, look at them hard copy, whatever ticks the boxes for you, and think, okay, I'm now just getting connected to reviewing my bank statements. If you've got customer accounts, you've got credit accounts, review how quickly your customers are actually paying. Do you know how often they pay you? Do you know which customers are outstanding? And again, it's not massive major things here, but it gets you into the habit of reading reports. If you're looking at things like onboarding, if you're looking at things like marketing, look at the stats. There are loads of stats collated, some of them quite general, some of them quite crap, in terms of social media feeds. Have a look at the metrics that sit behind what you're doing. Very few of us, or not as many as we should do, will not look at things like Google Analytics, Google My Business, will not look at things like the stats that get generated by Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and the like. Now, they are getting less, by the way, so we have less insight from those stats, but it's still metrics nevertheless. And if you're not looking at metrics, if you're not looking at those numbers here, just get into the pattern of doing that. You may not necessarily understand what they all say, but at least you can get into the habit of, say, once a week, grab a coffee, spend half an hour reviewing what those reports are saying. Once you get into the habit of doing that, you're getting comfortable with reading those figures, getting comfortable with having a look at those reports, then you can always up your game. Then you can say, I don't actually quite know what this means, let me find out. But you need to establish patterns of behavior. And you need to do that. It's not oh, it would be nice. If you don't figure out what's going on in your business, if you can't say how you're progressing against your route map, all that's going to happen is, folks, you're just going to add more time, more anxiety, more distress as to whether you're actually progressing in the right way. Underpinning all of this, just to wrap up, is a Northern Star, but you need a plan. And I don't mean a straitjacket, you need a route map. You need to put your milestones, you need to put your key measures there, you need to look at them, you need to review, monitor and react. Folks, I hope you found this useful. If you have, I'd love to hear your feedback and comments. If you disagree, if you think it's all rubbish, then I'd love to hear why you thought so. If you've got thoughts for something that you'd like explained or expanded on, then by all means, please let me know. I'm going to give a little plug for my book, I Hate Numbers, because I think, personally speaking, it's a great book. I've got some good feedback, good comments on that. So if you want to change your relationship with numbers, if you want to change them for the good, by the way, not for bad, then I would recommend check it out on the website I Hate Numbers /I Hate Numbers book. If you want to try a sample chapter, a try before you buy if you wish. If you think, do you know what, I'm going to go straight for it, have a look at Amazon, I Hate Numbers. If you want to buy a printed copy, then that's quite possible as well if you're an anti-Amazon person. So folks, until next week, have a look at what's going on in your business. Get used to making sure you judge your performance and progress from that. And until next week, folks, have a good week.